Good morning, Maryland. I'm Christian Schaefer here at Television Park. And this morning, we're talking about the House of Ruth, Maryland, with Sherry Parliament from House of Ruth. Sherry, thanks so much for joining us this morning.
Thanks so much for having me. We're excited to be part of this.
So October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. This has been a different kind of year for organizations of all types. But that doesn't necessarily impact the need. There is still a need for people to donate, and that's why we're hoping to fill the house this month.
Yes, sir. We're very excited about Fill the House. So we have been very fortunate that because of our community support, we have remained open this entire time. So our emergency shelter has been open. All of our services have been open. So the need hasn't changed for us. Our shelter is full, and we have kids and babies and moms who need help and families who need help. So it's really important that we continue to see that support from the community.
Sherry, we do hear stories anecdotally about what's been going on during the pandemic, with obviously so many more people kind of stuck at home, not just for days or weeks, but for months and months now. We're well over 6 months into this thing. And in some cases, there's been talk that could have an impact, potentially even have more instances for domestic violence. Is that something that House of Ruth has noticed here in our area?
What we're seeing is that people are waiting much longer to reach out for help. So they're not having those natural outlets like churches and when they go to school drop off and the abuser going to work. So we're finding that people are reaching out much later than they normally would have, so that when they come to us, the situations are much more critical than if they had asked for help 6 months ago or 4 months ago. They're really at a point now where they have to leave immediately and have to make some choices that, had they started the process a little bit earlier, they may not have been in that situation. But we've tried to create some resources for women who may be stuck at home with abusive partners. And so we started a chat line, so you can go to our website and you can chat with somebody online so that you don't have to talk. We have a 24-hour hotline where you can call in, but not everybody can talk on the phone. If they're in the home with an abusive partner, they need to be able to do things much more discreetly. So we've created some other resources for folks to reach out if they need help.
That is a big help for so many people. And we're talking this month, and there's an event next week that we're going to talk about in a little bit, but all month long, I know we're trying to raise monetary donations for House of Ruth. Can you just talk a little bit about the impact that has when someone makes a monetary donation to House of Ruth, Maryland?
Sure. So we work with about 9,000 adult victims annually. And so that's predominantly women, but we also have a number of men who come to us and receive services. We provide counseling services, legal services. Legal services are so important. We are actually in the courthouse, several courthouses throughout the state, so that when someone comes in to file a protective order, they have an attorney there to help them at that moment. The judicial process can be very overwhelming for someone who doesn't know it, so it's really helpful to have that attorney there. We have transitional housing support, so for victims who are ready to get into a safe space, we place them in the community. We provide them with some community support so that they can be stable in that environment. We also have about 600 children who receive services annually from House of Ruth, Maryland. And these are kids who have grown up in violent homes. And so working with them to kind of process that trauma and give them some healthy coping skills as they move forward with their lives. So the financial support keeps all of those programs running. Make sure that there's a counselor available to answer the hotline or the chat line when somebody calls, and make sure there's overnight support in the shelter so that when things happen, as they do, these are families no different than ours, except they're in a time of trauma. So they have, all of the regular stuff that we have, the coughs, the colds, the bumps, the bruises, and then all the additional trauma of being in a violent environment.
And all those things take money to operate.
Absolutely. They take money to run and staff to pay to help them.
And it's been a little difficult to hold actual fundraisers this year. I know you do the spring luncheon, and that was just one of those events that was typically a lot of people all together in a big room. And it's not something that we can do that right now.
Right. That was scheduled for April 1st. So right after all of this happened. So with about 2 weeks notice, we had to pull the plug on that event. But we were very fortunate that all of our big sponsors maintained their support and just said, keep the money, use it as you need to. We had to transition our summer event to a different thing. So we've really been looking at other ways to engage the community, and it's created some fun opportunities for us. And so we're looking at new ways to do things and ways to engage people in the work that we're doing. But we have been very fortunate that lots of folks in the community have said, I know you need more help right now, and I got to work at home. I didn't lose my job. I'm able to help out. And folks have really been stepping up and supporting us, and we really appreciate it.
Sherry, can you talk a little bit about why October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and why we run this Fill the House operation now at this time of year?
Sure. So we know that 1 in 4 women will be a victim at some point in their lives. And so this is a community effort. This is not, we talk about lots of things that we need to observe and pay attention to. And this is one of those things that we don't talk about. We don't talk about the number of people who are, brutalized, brutally beaten, and just in horrific circumstances at home, because for so long it's been a private situation. We don't want to talk about it. That's a family matter. That's not for folks to get involved in. So it's really important to bring it out into the light, to make it an issue for people to talk about, to engage women and men in the conversation. And so it's really important to have that focus, at least for 1 month a year, to really talk about why this is such an important issue. And for us, this is an issue all year long. It's great in October because everybody pays attention to it, but it's up to us to really take it beyond October, because it is a matter that impacts all of us, and we have to be mindful of that. And so Fill the House we do in October because it is Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and Fill the House creates a great need. We know that folks are very interested in giving towards the end of the year, and this is a time period where people tend to want to do more, and you're kind of getting in that holiday spirit and really looking to give back. And so bringing the diapers and the wipes and the formula and those types of things that we have such a critical need for in the shelter are really important to the work that we do. And it frees up money that people donate to pay for other things, to make sure that we have all of the services available for the people that are coming to us.
And we run down that list of items that House of Ruth needs as far as donations, and we'll be collecting those next week in person. But it's interesting if you think for a moment when we're saying about those things that we need, things like diapers and wipes and formula, it kind of gives you some insight into the work that's done there. And just really at times you're dealing with women and children going through some of the worst times in their lives that need certain things at certain times that they just won't be able to get. It just tells you, or it just shows you really what the need is.
Yeah, and oftentimes people come to us literally with the clothes on their backs. They've come to us after a police engagement. Something has happened where the police have been contacted and they've brought them to us. We have people come to us in a cab and they literally have, whatever they could grab on the way out. So providing, especially for infants and for young children, helping the mothers with this, just meeting this very basic need so that she can think about other things. It goes back to the hierarchy of needs. If you're not fed and sheltered, you can't even begin to think about some of those other things to have safety in your life. So meeting some of those basic needs are real critical to the survivors we work with.
So how might it normally go for a woman leaving an abusive relationship, arriving at the shelter in that terrible scenario? Is there a time frame when the House of Ruth can work with that woman, or take us through what can happen at that point?
So when someone comes to us, they can come to us in a variety of different ways, but when they actually come to the shelter, we work on getting them into a room in our shelter. Our rooms are sort of like a small hotel room, if you can imagine that. They have a private bathroom, so they'll have a bed, a small dresser, a bathroom, so they have some of those needs. Our first thing is to make sure that she's safe and that she has the basic needs that she has. Shampoo, toothbrush, toothpaste. If there are children involved, making sure they have the things that they need, clothing so that they can go out into the community to, go to their jobs, or if they have appointments with social services or other things, that we can keep them going in their lives. One of the things that's been really interesting this fall is, much like everyone else, the kids in our shelter are virtual schooling. And so our staff has been helping out. We've had to get Chromebooks, we've had to get charging stations for these Chromebooks. And then some of our staff have had to learn how to manipulate some of the school things to help some of the parents in our shelter as they're helping their kids with this virtual schooling. So some of the same thing, like I said before, these families are no different than the families that are out in the community at home. They're dealing with, on top of, all of the issues related to virtual schooling and the pandemic, they have this additional trauma in their lives. So it's been an interesting fall in our shelter.
Sure sounds like it. Sherry Parliament joining us from House of Ruth, Maryland. And thanks again so much for doing this here as we try to fill the house for House of Ruth. Let's talk about the event next week. Past couple of years, we've had that in-person donation event where we do try to make it still relatively easy for people to drive through and kind of drop off what they have and some of those items that we've been talking about that the shelter can use. This year, we got to do it in the era of social distancing. So I think what we're going to try to do is just hope that people can bring stuff by in their trunk. We're going to be at the Wise Markets at Towson Place 1 week from today, and just open up the trunk and take things out. I think that's how we're going to try to pull it off this year.
Right, that's the plan. Our goal is to make it as easy as possible. The only way it's easier is to stay at home in your jammies and make a donation online, but we'll be there on site. We will have volunteers there helping out, and we will all have masks and gloves and those sorts of things on. But we are asking that folks stay in their car as much as they're able. Put their stuff in the trunk, pop the trunk. We're happy to take that and make that process as easy and as simple as possible, and also safe, both for our staff and your staff that are out there, and also for the community, because things go both ways, and so we want to make sure we keep everyone safe as we do this.
Yeah, this is the 4th year that WMAR-2 News has partnered with House of Ruth, Maryland for this event. And Sherry, you mentioned something earlier that I wanted to ask you more about, and it's about the courts. The courthouses, for the most part, have been closed over the summer due to the pandemic. And I'm wondering if House of Ruth or the attorneys that you work with had any difficulties this summer working under those circumstances. I know that there must have been some way for hearings to take place for protective orders and things like that. Can you just talk about how that part of it has been for people who need the services this summer?
Sure. So protective orders are considered an emergency hearing. So even though the courthouses physically were closed, those proceedings were still happening. So you were still able to file for a temporary protective order or a peace order during the process. And so we've been working with clients all along. We've done virtual hearings. We've done virtual meetings with judges. So it's much like everything else in the world. We transitioned to a virtual environment. It meant some technology challenges on our end because we didn't have all of those things in place as we moved into the pandemic, but we do have those things in place now. And so our attorneys continue to counsel clients and get the services that they need for them. And as across the state, different courthouses are opening in different ways and at different times. We've been going back in where appropriate, and where not appropriate, we're continuing to do those virtual things. So even though the physical locations were closed, we were able to continue those services throughout.
Sherry, I don't know if you noticed this morning, it's in this morning's New York Times, the hip hop artist Megan Thee Stallion wrote an op-ed that's in there. She was just on Saturday Night Live the previous weekend with this message, protect Black women. And I don't know if there's been any type of response, or if maybe it's just a good thing to be getting that word out among minority communities as well about the importance of making sure that people know there is help out there if they're in an abusive situation.
Absolutely. And it's so many different communities that need to understand that we're here to help them, whether it's the African American or Black community, whether it's the Hispanic or Latinx community, also the LGBTQ plus communities. Each of those communities face different challenges when it comes to intimate partner violence. There are cultural issues. There are different things or different elements of the abusive relationships and the control that comes in different ways in those communities that we have to reach out to all of those communities. And it's really important that everyone understand we're here to help anyone. We're not exclusive. We know this is an issue that impacts everybody in our community. Victims come in all races, genders, colors, anything that you want to say. We see that, and we're here to help them. And we work with our counselors to make sure that they have training in culturally sensitive or community sensitive ways to engage with those clients specifically.
It would seem that over time, people have become more comfortable talking about these issues, which could potentially lead people to ask for help sooner in certain situations, or at least know they're not alone. They're certainly not the only one going through this. Although, Sherry, I suspect that sometimes a woman in that situation might feel like they're the only one that's going through it. I'm just wondering if you think that this awareness over the years has started to take hold a little bit, and more people are feeling more comfortable talking about issues like this.
We've definitely seen changes over the I've been working on this issue for 10 years now, and one of the things that we've worked really hard on is talking about the role of the abusive partner. We have to hold the abusive partner accountable. We can't just say, why didn't she leave? For so long, it was all on her. It was all on the victim. Why doesn't she leave? Why doesn't she move out? There's lots of reasons why that doesn't happen. And so we have to talk more about this, because we have to hold the abusive partner accountable. They have to understand, and we as the community have to do that. It can't just be House of Ruth Maryland or some other advocacy organization. We as the community have to say, you know what, that joke was inappropriate. the way you talked to that woman was inappropriate. Like being mindful of some of those things and actually standing up and saying something. And that can be hard. It can be very uncomfortable. We have a group of men called Men Greater Than Violence who work with our organization and really look at how do we engage men in this conversation, because for years this has been a women's issue. Women talk about it, women are the fighters, but we can't do this alone. We need men engaged in the conversation. And for men, it can be really awkward and uncomfortable for them to tell a friend, a buddy, a brother, hey, what you're doing is wrong, or to challenge them on that. So the more that we talk about it and the more that people understand it, I think we do see more of that awareness, and people are a little bit more willing to say, hey, you know what, that wasn't a good thing to do. You know, that made me uncomfortable. Please don't do that again. And let them know that people see what you're doing and people see your behaviors and that it isn't okay, and that's not an okay behavior to engage in. So we are seeing change. There's way farther to go. We have a lot more change to happen. But our goal is to work ourselves out of business. It would be great if nobody needed our services, but we're not there yet.
And I understand, or correct me if I'm wrong, but the House of Ruth also runs programs for men, potentially who've been abusers in the past, because they're not just going to go away and go into prison for the rest of their lives. In many cases, they're going to be out and around and potentially could use some help in finding ways to act differently out in the real world.
Absolutely. We have an abuse intervention program, and we work with abusers because what we've done for years and years is we work with the victims, and we provide all these services for victims to help her. What we know with the abusers is if there's one victim, there will likely be another victim. So we have to work with the abusive partner to change those behaviors. And so we're working in a supportive services model now for our abusive partners, because we know that this one issue of the abuse isn't everything that's going on in their lives. They often need access to education resources. They need job skills. They need, parenting classes. They need all of these things to help support them, because they likely grew up in a violent environment. And so that's all they know. And so we have to work with them to say, hey, what you did was wrong, and we need you to acknowledge that. But then also, what do you replace that with? You can't just say, well, this is wrong, don't do it that way. Well, how should I do it? And so working with them to identify the inappropriate behaviors and give them coping skills and healthy skills to change those behaviors so that as they're engaging, because oftentimes the victims are the parents of their children. And so they're always going to have some sort of engagement with that person. So how do we make it a healthy engagement? And how do we stop the cycle? If we can make the abusive partner a better parent, then that child is likely going to do better in life as well. And so it's really an important part of the work that we do to work with those abusive partners to make sure that they don't continue to engage in violent behavior.
Okay, fill the house. Let's talk one more time about what we hope to see 1 week from today at the Wise Markets out of Towson Place Shopping Center. What are some of the items that House of Ruth, Maryland, most needs right now?
Diapers, wipes, and formula, particularly larger size diapers, the 5s and 6s, because everybody likes to buy the little ones because they're cute and there's 8 million in a box. The larger sizes, there's fewer in a box, so it takes more boxes to get through. So the larger size diapers are particularly important. Formula, wipes. New twin size bedding. So when someone comes into our shelter, we do have twin size beds. So it's nice. We need to give them something for the bed, and that's something that you really don't want used. You want that to be new, fresh for the client. So working through twin size comforters, standard pillows, twin size bedding, so that there's sheets, fitted sheets, flat sheets, pillowcases, so that they have access to that. And then towels. As you can imagine, again, you don't want to use a used towel. We really need new bath items for the clients as well. So those are some of the things that we are really looking to collect, because those are also stable for the most part, with the exception of the formula, but we rotate that out to make sure that we don't have anything that expires. But those things will last. So stuff that we get in today will help get us, or next Wednesday, will help get us through the next several months of the needs that we have for the clients that we serve.
I always like to point out, too, that people don't need to bring like 10 boxes of diapers. I prefer to see 10 different people bringing one box of diapers each, and next thing you know, you've got hundreds and hundreds of boxes. So I feel like I'm hoping to get a wide audience. People just bring a little bit, whatever they can, because it all goes a long way.
Absolutely. And that's, and it takes all of us. And that's, that's such an important message. It's not one person bringing, as you said, 100 things. It's everybody in the community giving a little bit, and that makes a huge difference.
Okay, we're going to fill the house 1 week from today. Once again, it's at the Towson Place Shopping Center. We're going to be out in front of the Wise Markets there, collecting all day long. Thanks so much for all the donations that people have been sending in monetarily all month long as well. And Sherry Parliament from House of Ruth, Maryland, thanks so much for doing this morning. And it's great to see you. And good luck the rest of the way.
Thanks, Christian. It's good to see you as well. Take care.
Okay, see you soon. Thanks, everybody, for watching.